What's the right priority to succeed in your project? My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management specialist. I help professionals to become successful project managers. Before I start, the content today here is part of the warm-up for the Project Management Summit. Project Management Summit, it's a free event I'm going to make talking about project management. There are going to be 4 sessions where I'm going to talk about project management careers, skills that you need to develop. I'm going to talk about frameworks, waterfall, agile, or tailoring, finance for project management, and a bunch of other stuff. Everything there is free. So make sure that you click the link in the description of this video here and subscribe. Everything is free again, but the content will be available only for this week. So make sure you don't miss it and see you there. Well, talking about what's the right priority to see into your project. I got a question a few days ago that got me thinking there. The question was basically what's my first priority here? To deliver for the customer, to work with the things for the customer, or to work on my internal documentation or reports for management? Well, unless you are working a very weird organization, dysfunctional organization, the priority is always supporting the customer. A company cannot exist without customers. So if the companies they do not have customers, then there is no purpose for the company to exist. That's the first thing. So supporting your customer should always be your priority. Of course, depending on the environment, you can talk about also contract negotiation, do scope, and there's different kind of discussion. But setting up your mindset, your customer, it's always priority. So if you're talking about a very important delivery for the customer or an important delivery for a manager, your priority should be the important delivery for the customer. And why I say that only in dysfunctional organizations that you see something different going on? Well, because at least it was dysfunctional in my perspective. I've worked in a project in a dysfunctional organization, and then you have there the main stakeholders that all the costs for the project go in his budget, and he was asking something, but then I said, no, that's not what we are going to do. We want to do it a different way. So failing to understand, okay, in this case was of course an internal customer and then he had contact with the direct customer, but failing to understand that the reason why you have a project is to deliver value, and the project only exists as long as you're delivering value, is failing to understand that the customer is always your priority. It can be, of course, sometimes an internal customer, sometimes an external customer, but the project does not have a reason if you forget about the value for the project. The company does not exist if you forget about the value that the company can deliver for a customer. And so this is first the very important thing to set the mindset. That being said, what's very important also to understand that you as a project manager, you are there to make sure that the project deliver its value for the customer, but also deliver its value for the company. And you are also there to make sure that you are managing stakeholders. And managing stakeholders includes, of course, the customer. That's always one of the top stakeholders that you have there to make sure that you are satisfying. But also it means managing the internal stakeholders, and that includes managers there. So your question should not be one or the other. It's not should be, or I do work for the customer and forget about whatever my internal stakeholders are there asking for me, or you can see it also as your internal customer. Because in the end, if you deliver something, the customer is happy, but your company is not, also your project fails. Because there's the value that you deliver for the customer, but also there's the value for the company. The value for the company a lot of times is measured in a business case, because it's a simple way to measure it, and then of course it reflects on money that the company is going to make. But you cannot forget that you need to satisfy your internal stakeholders. And satisfying internal stakeholders entails what? Following your process, creating reports, and everything else. So you should never think about, or either I'm working for the customer, or either I'm working for the company. You as a project manager should have the mindset that you need to find a way to balance up the constraints that you have, because if you're working in an organization, in a project, resources are always limited. I've never seen a company in my life where you have unlimited resource, people, money, and say just go ahead and do whatever you want. That does not exist, or at least I've never seen in my life. Maybe there's a company there that works like that, but it should be nice to hear something. And if you work in a company like that, please send me a message. I would love to discuss with you. But in general, is companies, they have limited resources, people and money, and you can look for other type of resource, machine and equipment and whatever. So your job there is balance out the constraints. And of course, when I'm talking about balance out the constraints, meaning what are your boundary conditions? What kind of constraints you have with the customer? What kind of constraints you have with the company? Because of course your priority is to support the customer, but sometimes the customer will come and ask you things that you cannot do. So what's the right thing to do there? Say no. Sorry, I cannot do that. And of course, you always need to explain the reason. Say, I cannot do that because this and that and that. Sometimes they ask something that's not technically feasible, or time-wise it's not feasible, or they ask something that it's not in your scope. That might add additional risk for the project, that might add additional cost, that might kill your business case. So it's important that you understand those constraints around the customer side. And if you need to say no, you need to say no. Or you can give a yes with conditions, which is much better. Say, yes, I can do that, but you need to compromise this and this item, or it will cost you this much extra money, or there's something else that we need to do. Have this discussion is naturally. This is part of managing your stakeholders. So it's very important that you work with this external customer to understand. And sometimes you need to keep in mind that the customer will ask something that's not the right priority for them, or not as important for them, because sometimes I've been working with all types of suppliers around the world, and sometimes you just ask, can you do this by this week? And people say, oh yeah, you can. Sometimes you can say, oh no, it's not possible this week, I can do the other one, is that okay? And the customer say, might be, yeah, I do that all the time. Of course, for the really important stuff, I say, sorry, no, it needs to be done this week. But if you say no, that's how you discuss. That's how communication go. But that's why communication is also so important in projects. And communication does not mean that you're just listening stuff, but also you're providing inputs back. So if you have this discussion with the customer saying, no, this week it's not, I did that also probably hundreds of times, but I'm going to give you an example that I did last week. We had an important milestone that the supplier needs to approve, and then the supplier was rushing out, and someone started pushing them, can you do that last week? And they were saying, but it will be difficult. I said, okay, I understand. If you do that by next week, that's still okay, but next week it's a hard milestone. So make sure you work for that. And the people, of course, they were kind of feeling better because they were a lot of under pressure. I'm pushing them and I give them some space to work on. But at the same time, I told them, yeah, this is the hard milestone. And why I'm saying this example? Because sometimes it's important to understand to the customer before just confirming something. And then you say you're going to drop everything else that you need to do internally for your internal customer to do something that's really not urgent. So having this understanding is part of the communication there. So communication is not just sit in a meeting, stay quiet, listen whatever is being asked for you and try to execute it. Communication is asking questions back. Say, do you really need this? And sometimes you can explain, say, this week here I have something important with my management. Can we move this for next week? That's a way to work. Or if there's something that's critical for them, then you go back to your internal stakeholders, say, yeah, I have this critical delivery here, critical milestone or whatever for the customer, explain to the manager, but then I would like to negotiate with you few extra days so I can complete that for the task. Does it work for you? I can tell you in 95% of the case they're going to say, okay, I understand you are working for something that's very important to the customer, so that's okay. I can give you a few extra days. This is a part of being a project management. So it's important that you do not think on only yes or no scenarios. You need to think about yes if, no if, and all those kinds of options, because that's the complexity of the environment that we are working on with a project. And of course, if the environment was quite simple, it's yes and no, it would be much easier to replace by a machine, by artificial intelligence, which nowadays with ChatGPT, it goes very, very well. They can do a lot of stuff. But still, and maybe no one knows what the future will bring, but still, for a lot of those things, it's not easy because communication is also a two-way, right? And I see that a lot when you talk a lot with people. Uh, if you're talking with someone and they do not mention even the subject they're asking for, I get those kind of questions all the time. For example, today I think I got a question on my Instagram account for someone that was looking for something on Scrum.org and just sent me. I look for the quoting here. It was saying, I just look in the website and the cost is 650, I don't know, euros or whatever currency. Can you confirm? For God's sake, what a website! What are you doing there? This is not related with me. How can I confirm that? This is communicating and thinking what you are trying to communicate is always quite important. It is a very important part of managing your stakeholders and also managing your priorities with your team. Because if you're not clear in your communication, your team will not understand what they need to do. And no, you're not going to find anybody that's perfect in communication. So someone is, you always need to put effort there. Even if you think that you're good, you always need to think that, okay, how I can improve it, how I can make it more clear, how can this be more effective. Because if you improve your communication, you're going to improve how you're going to manage your stakeholders. If you improve how you're going to manage your stakeholders, that will improve how you're going to manage your priorities. So you do not get to those kind of situations, say, either I do deliver to my customer or either I deliver here for a report from our manager. And I get it because I've seen dysfunctional managers, also dysfunctional leaders. I've been doing that for more than 30 years, where people say that forget about this and you need to do that. And of course then sometimes you drop the ball with the customer. But that's, again, this is a dysfunctional kind of leadership, this dysfunctional kind of organization. And also not the best way to manage everything that you need to do with the customer. And sometimes keep in mind that it's not going to be perfect. Sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes you are late with something that you need to do for the customer. Sometimes you are late with something that you need to do internally. But that's how you do that. So what you need to do? Well, you are going to go and have a proper communication there. Saying, first, if you did a mistake, take the ownership. Saying, sorry, I made a mistake here. I missed something here, or there was an issue, I could not own it. Take the ownership, what you need to do, and move forward. So having this idea here that first of all, that's the customer that you need to achieve. And by the way, that's one of the things I love about Lean. If you look for the value definition from Lean, is something that's going to transform or add value in transform the form of a product, service, or whatever you're doing there. Something that the customer is willing to pay for, and something that's done the first time right. So if the customer is not willing to pay for something, then there's a big chance that's not going to be recognized as value as Lean. And why? Because then Lean also gives you this uh, or customer-oriented mindset here. And then you can look for the Lean from general different dimensions why they are looking to support the customer. One of the ideas of also of having flow flexibility, reduce lead time is to support change with the customer. But I do not want to discuss about Lean because we could talk hours just about Lean today. I'm just saying that's why I love Lean, and that's also why I include a lot of Lean in my own training. Because even though Lean is not directly associated with project management, sometimes it has a lot of value and can add a lot of value for project management, for problem solving, looking for value, looking for optimization. Agile is kind of developed based on Lean. Scrum comes from Lean, part of it at least. It's based on the Lean philosophy. You see Kanban coming from Lean, so that's quite important. And there's a lot of things on Lean that you can add value here for, even if you're working with waterfall. That's why you have Lean construction. That's why you have Lean management. That's why you have Lean manufacturing. So closing here the parentheses on the Lean discussion, but focusing in what you need to do with the customer, it's very important. And managing these expectations and this communication, it's very important. But also you need to make sure that you are doing this correctly, internally and externally. Because I've worked in a project where the customer, or not, let me rephrase this. I've seen projects in organizations that I was working on where the customer was happy and say, "Hey, good that you delivered this project." But your internal stakeholder, the internal stakeholder, the organization was completely unhappy. Why? Because to make sure that the customer was as happy as they were, there was a lot of scope creep, extra activities that were not planned, meaning that was a lot of extra cost, which killed the business case internally. So if the customer is happy, that's of course priority, very important. But if you are killing the business case of your project will not succeed, the project will fail. And of course, the companies they have purpose, they should not exist only to make money, but money it's kind of works as oxygen for people. If you do not have oxygen, you cannot breathe and you die. It's the same for companies. If they do not have money, they cannot survive. They cannot work in the long term if they do not have money. So understanding, managing the constraints, that's one of the main jobs of any project manager. And important part of managing those constraints is understanding what the customer needs, understanding what you need to do for the customer, but also thinking about your internal stakeholders here, your internal customer here. And the project manager is there because of that. And you say, I do not like to manage all those different constraints, so you should not work with project management. Because in the end, knowing like a waterfall, agile, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, it's only part of project management. Because if you do not know how to translate those things and put those things in practice, yeah, you're not going to be a good project manager. You're not going to succeed as a project manager. And to make sure that you're going to put those things in practice, you're going to need leadership, you're going to need communication, you're going to need teamwork, you're going to need stakeholder management. All those kinds of things, they are there and they are going to enable you to be a successful project manager. And all those things there, they come with constraints, they come with risks, they are going to come with changes. Another thing that I've seen before, I think I already gave this example there at some point, I do not remember now, that one of the projects I had, this I'm talking about a few years ago, I do not remember, 3 years ago probably. And then the customer approved a type of package that we need to ship our product to their factory. And more late stage of the project, they say, yeah, this package does not work for me. And then, of course, we try to understand, okay, what's going on, because there's a change and there's a cost involved there. And then I went to my team in the factory. They say, okay, what's going on there? And they say, the customer approved the package, and we already have this package in stock. And if we change the package, we need to throw this away. And then of course, they were more looking to this option. They say, I do not want to do that. And I get it. Of course, you do not want to do some type of rework, but that my message for them was quite simple. Say, guys, this product is custom made for this customer. So if this package does not work for the customer, then they cannot use that, they cannot buy from us, then this entire project is useless. And of course, if we want to discuss responsibilities, we can, depending on the type of cost you can present to the customer, have a financial discussion. That's a different type of talk. But your mindset, we need to support the customer, because otherwise nothing will work out. But of course, part of the mindset is, okay, I'm going to support the customer. And the other part, okay, what about my internal stakeholder here? Who is going to pay the cost for this? If this impact and delay the operation here, who is going to pay for that? So then I manage the constraint, meaning say, hey, dear customer, that's fine. We are going to change here the package. Please, this is our new package proposal. Please approve before we move forward with that. However, I can only implement this package proposal here after, I don't know, at the time was 3 or 4 months, because I need to buy material. And they say, okay, we can do that. And then we did not discuss, because the cost was, I don't know, 1,000 or couple of thousand of euros. And looking for the business case perspective, we were talking about more than 200 million euros for the entire program. Then say, I'm not going to discuss 1,000 euros with the customer for that. Does not worth the energy. And then we managed to change. But again, customer priority, customer your first priority. Understand your internal stakeholders. What are the constraints around it? Why your internal stakeholders is asking something? Because like reporting, even though sometimes it can be very boring or it can be even annoying, it's part of the work. You're never going to find a work that you don't have a part that say that the word is not perfect. You might have a part say, I do not like the report and documentation. But if it's the part of the process of the company, you need to do it. Of course, your job as a project manager is understand this documentation, the project that you need to do it, and challenge what does not make sense. But what is required and what makes sense, you need to manage the expectations and tell your internal customer, say, hey, I cannot do that. Why? Because of this and that. Hey, I need to if you have a report that you need to deliver on Friday, say, hey, this week I'm traveling, I'm visiting a customer. Is that okay if I deliver the report on Monday or Tuesday? Negotiating. Another skill that you need to be a project manager. So part of, if you're communicating properly, that also will bring a lot of negotiation that you need to enable. And that's okay. Saying no, it's also okay. You can say no to the customer, you can say no to your internal stakeholders. Of course, again, you're managing constraints. Then you need to understand the impact. Okay, what if I say no to the customer? You say, no, I'm not going to do that this week for you. What's the impact? And sometimes they're going to say, they might not like it and say, okay, let's go for next week. Or sometimes I say, no, if you do not do that this week, that will impact this, and this, and all the other activities that I need to do, that will impact the entire project that we are running together, and that's not doable. Then you balance out the constraints. You figure out the discussions. But usually there's not an answer. In project management, you are going to see very rarely that you have something that's very black and white. And that's also where I see the type of question that I get from people. And you can see a bit their maturity on project management. Because they say, what's the best way that I need to do it? What's the document that I must have? Well, in reality is there's nothing written down on stone. Why? Because there's all types of project there. And you're rarely going to get something that's so straightforward, black and white like that. Of course, if I know a lot of the background, then I can give some guidance, right? Like I was doing some mentoring for a project manager in Belgium. They were struggling there, and then I asked, okay, do you have a WBS? And he showed me, and I said, this is not good because you cannot manage your project with that. Then it makes very easy to me to give a straightforward suggestion. But without knowing anything, saying what's the best project management tool? Depends. What's the best tool to build a house? It depends what you need to achieve, what you need to do. So all those kind of things they come together. And this understanding that those things are project constraints, that you need to go around it, it's very important. And so coming back to the original question, who is the priority? Well, most of the case it's the customer. If I'm going to say without any background or without any additional information, of course your customer is the priority. Why? Because the company only exists to support the customer. However, with all those discussions that we just had here, what you need there, you are the project manager. You need to understand what constraints you have it. So what the customer is asking, is it reasonable? Is it feasible? How does it conflict with your internal customers asking? How you balance out the constraints? What are the scenarios if you do to the customer do not complete something internally? What's the scenario if you do it internally, you do not do the customer? Can you negotiate? Can you set the expectations there? Say, dear customer, this week I cannot. I'm going to do it next week. Okay, move forward. Or if the customer say no, that's a really hard point for me because of this, and then you get this reason, and then you go for an internal stakeholder. Hey, I need more time for this report because I have this high priority item here for a customer that I need to support because this is that and that. Okay, agreed, move forward. So balance out constraints. It's your job as a project manager. So stop looking for black and white answers and start to understand constraints, start to understand the complexity of your project is embedded there, the risks that are around there, and based on that you need to take decisions. And sometimes the decisions are not perfect, sometimes you do not make the best ones, sometimes you're going to make mistakes. That's part of the game. Own it, what you're doing, take the ownership of what you're doing, correct what you need to correct, adapt what you need to adapt, and move forward with that. Again, please like and share this content. That helps me a lot to understand that you see the value in what I'm doing here. Also, like and share this to make sure that it can reach more people and more people can learn project management, or send this to people that you think needs to learn about managing priorities in your project to succeed. If you have questions, always ask. Make sure you put your questions here in the comments. I'm going to do my best to answer that. Also, make sure you follow me for more content. Every week there's more content. And if you have something that you like to see, just send to me, because sometimes I get those questions from people in general, and that gives me idea. Oh, that might work to have a discussion. That might work a longer content to explain something. So that's very nice. So reach out, make your questions, share your challenges with me. I'm here. If you want to succeed as a project manager, I'm here to support you in this journey. And also, don't forget about the Project Management Summit. That's going to happen in the coming weeks. It's a very nice event where I prepare, I already mentioned, 4 sessions where I talk about project management opportunities. I talk about frameworks, how you're going to improve your career, how you can add more value to your company. This is an event for people that are starting with project management, but for people that's already working with project management, has some experience and want to further develop their skills. And everything is free. So the only catch here is that the content will be available only for this week. And of course, if you have another feedback, feel free to ask it. Also, when you sign up for the Project Management Summit, make sure you join the WhatsApp group. Why? Because in that WhatsApp group, you're going to have everything first rent. Sometimes you get emails, but you miss the email. Sometimes it takes a few days before you read all your emails. Your WhatsApp makes communication much faster and easier. That's why we have a WhatsApp group there. So I'm not going to call you via WhatsApp. I'm just trying to make communication more efficient with you. And also make sure that you complete the survey there, because the survey helps me to understand your challenges, it helps me to understand the problems that you have and what you want to overcome, how I can better support you in your project management journey. Remember, if you want to succeed as a project manager, I'm here to support you. Thank you very much.